All right, good evening. Good evening and welcome back to JPC Spiritual Talk. Jared Campbell. We're going to do things a little differently this evening. A computer died on me. But we're going to talk about Damon Wilson, the CEO, and we're going to navigate democracy and controversy at the helm of the National Endowment for Democracy. So we're going to talk about the CEO of the NED this evening. Today's report is brought to us by our Father in Heaven. Without any further ado, let's jump into this report. So we're going to share this, get the screen shared over. Get right to it this evening. I'll follow along just with the report tonight. Hopefully it doesn't mess me up too much. Usually I have my computer, but I think it should flow just fine. And some of you can let me know if you like it better, right? So there's the introduction, right? We can read that later. It's not as important as the report itself. So here's an objective report on Mr. Wilson from the NED. We're going to start out with some personal information. So here's what we know. So Damon Wilson was born on May 24th, 1973. His nationality is American. His profession, foreign policy expert. Current position, he's the current president and CEO of the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED. His tenure has been there since 2021, June of 2021. The NED is an independent grant-making foundation that supports freedom and democracy worldwide. It's right off their website. We talked a little bit about that last night. Here's some previous key positions. So he an executive vice president at the Atlantic Council. His tenure there was from 2011 to 2021. His focus was international cooperation and U.S. national security policy. Next, Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for European Affairs. National Security Council, the NSC. His tenure was during President George W. Bush's second term. So I pulled up some fun facts about George W. Bush for a minute. So George W. Bush, he attended Yale University. He also attended a secret society called the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Their badge is a golden emblem featuring a skull supported by crossbones with the number 322 on the lower jaw. Members are known to worship Ulaga, which, if you look at Wikipedia, says it's the fictional goddess of elegance. Sounds pagan if you ask me. The skull and bones are featured in books and movies, claiming that the society plays a role in global conspiracy for world control. There are also rumors that the Skull and Bones is a branch of the Illuminati, supposedly founded by German university alumni after the Illuminati was suppressed. Right? It was suppressed. It's right there on the screen. We get the idea. There's also rumors to suggest that Skull and Bones control the CIA. Right? Little fun facts. So his responsibilities, he was shaping the U.S. strategy on NATO and U.S.-European relations, advocating for democratic alliances. His areas of expertise: international relations, national security, and democracy support. Testimonies and media contributions. He regularly testifies before the U.S. Congress. He frequently contributes to media on issues related to foreign policy and also national security. Some of his early life, upbringing, education. So he was born in Nashville, Tennessee, raised in Charleston, South Carolina. Here's some of his education. Undergraduate degree was at Duke University, a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science in 1995. Scholarship, the Benjamin N. Duke Scholarship. Activities. He lived in Estonia during its first year of regained independence. He interned for U.S. Senator Ernest Hollings. Wilson also worked on the Unaccompanied Children in Exile project in Croatia. Heart Leadership Fellowship role. Project officer in Rwanda with Save the Children in 1995 through 1996. There was a terrible genocide there. Contribution: supported programming for children affected by the Rwandan genocide. Graduate degree: his institution, Princeton University, Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. Degree: Master of Public Administration, 1998, Internship, African Affairs Directorate of the National Security Council. Here's some of his early career. Presidential Management Fellow. So, assignment, State Department, NATO Office Under Secretary Madeleine Albright. So here's some fun facts about Madeleine Albright. She was born in 1937 and she died 2 years ago. She was an American diplomat and political scientist. She was the 64th U.S. Secretary of State from 1997 to 2001, becoming the first woman to uphold that position. Albright was a member of the Democratic Party and played a significant role in shaping U.S. foreign policy during her tenure. Madeleine Albright also co-invested $350 million with Jacob Rothschild and George Soros in Helios Towers, Africa, a venture focused on building and acquiring mobile phone towers across Africa. Wilson was also on the China desk of the U.S. Embassy in Beijing from 1998 to 2001. Here's a career overview. NATO and U.S.-European relations. In 2001 through 2004, he was a deputy director and also in the office of the NATO Secretary General, Lord Robinson. They had a pretty good relationship. Their key contributions. Wilson strongly supported, listen attentively, Wilson strongly supported enlarging NATO membership, right? NATO expansion, implementing the ISAF in Afghanistan and averting civil war in Macedonia. Remember, some of Russia's key points and why they invaded Ukraine. We'll keep it simple. It was about NATO expansion. It was also about denazifying Ukraine, right? In 2004 through 2006, the Director of Central, Eastern, and Northern European Affairs. Key contributions. Wilson contributed to the U.S. policy on Ukraine during the Orange Revolution, visa free travel expansion, and the Belarus Democracy Act. So the Orange Revolution, it was a series of protests and political upheaval in Ukraine from late November 2004 to January 2005. The movement gained momentum mainly due to the general population's initiative sparked by the aftermath of the 2004 Ukrainian presidential election runoff, which was alleged to be plagued by massive corruption, voter intimidation, and electoral fraud. Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, was the center of the civil resistance campaign, with thousands of protesters demonstrating daily nationwide. The revolution featured acts of civil disobedience, sit-ins, and general strikes organized by the opposition movement. So remember what the NED has been accused of by countries like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Bolivia, Venezuela, name a few, that they mess with their elections, right? They cause chaos, destabilizing governments. It also mentioned the Belarus Democracy Act of 2004, and the U.S. federal law that authorizes assistance for political parties and non-governmental organizations and independent media promoting democracy and human rights in Belarus. The House passed it on October 4, 2004, and the Senate on October 6, 2004, and President George W. Bush signed it into law on October 20th, 2004. The act states that the Belarusian authorities should not receive non-humanitarian financial aid from the U.S. It requires the president to report on arms sales by Belarus to state sponsors of terrorism and the wealth of senior Belarusian officials. President Bush also improvised support for returning Belarus to a Euro-Atlantic community of democracies. The act was introduced by Representative Chris Smith, with earlier, more severe versions proposed in 2001 and also in 2003. After its passage, the U.S. expressed concerns about the Belarusian government's repression of independent media and pro-democracy groups. President Lukashenko's government opposed the act. The Belarus Democracy Reauthorization Act of 2006 and the Belarus Democracy and Human Rights Act of 2011 further amended the original act. Remember what I said about the critics of the NED accused it of starting demonstrations that lead to destabilization and interfere with foreign elections. In 2007, Wilson was an executive secretary and chief of staff of U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. There, his role was to manage the most extensive U.S. embassy and supported Iraqi civilian surge. In 2007 and 2009, Wilson, senior director of the European Affairs, NSC. His key contributions: Wilson also managed U.S. policy on NATO, the EU, and security issues in the Europe and Eurasia Atlantic Council. In 2009 through 2011, Director, International Security Program. Transformation, the program became the Center for Strategy and Security. In 2011 through 2021, Executive Vice President. Key contributions: he advocated for U.S. leadership and a strong NATO. Wilson also supported NATO enlargement and democratic reforms in Ukraine and also in the Balkans. It's good information, right? Now let's get into some stuff here. So the RAND report, which was published in 2019, it was before the war, right? The invasion in 2022, talked about overextending and unbalancing Russia. This report was interesting. So here's kind of a quick rundown. The RAND report explores various nonviolent cost-opposing strategies that the United States and its allies could employ to stress and destabilize Russia's economy, military capabilities, and political standing. While some options are deemed more valid, they must be assessed with the broader context of U.S. strategy towards Russia, which the report needs to address. Despite facing numerous vulnerabilities, such as declining oil and gas prices, economic sanctions, an aging population, and rising under Putin, Russia remains a significant competitor to the U.S. in critical areas. Acknowledging this competitive rally, the RAND report researchers conducted a qualitative assessment of strategies that could impose cost on Russia, aiming to burden it more than the U.S. This approach is rooted in a Cold War era strategic competition principles, which advocate for controlling competition by directing it towards areas where the U.S. holds advantages. The report also presented a range of economic, geopolitical, and ideological, informational, and military options, evaluating their potential effectiveness, benefits, and associated risks. Wilson also helped to launch diversity and inclusion programs. I don't know how that got in there. That was a mistake on my notes, but okay, let's move on. So from the perspective of the RAND report, right? So the report's perspective, right? I'll push the link. I put the link in the description box. You can all look at it. So from the report's perspective, whether Ukraine wins or even is wholly destroyed, it doesn't matter. The success is measured by all the damage that will be inflicted on Russia. The steps covered in the RAND report are escalators. Some may say it would likely prompt a kind of a Russian counter-escalation. Publicly, the U.S. says we are not escalating, but is it fair to say that is a lie? The U.S. knew everything over 5 years ago, and everything seems to be planned. This also kind of was like a kickback off the 2018 National Defense Strategy. The National Defense Strategy highlights an increasing complex global security environment marked by challenges to the free and open international order and the resurgence of long-term strategic competition, in particular from powers like China and Russia. These nations aim to reshape global dynamics to fit their models, seeking control over other countries' economic, diplomatic, and security decisions. Interesting. So the grand chessboard. So I took something out of, I summarized pages 100 through 102. This was written by the former National Security Advisor of the United States in 1997. His name's right there on the screen. If any of you want to take a stab at it, let me know. So here, it was talking about the global partnership, where Russia would be recognized as a legal successor to the Soviet Union and an equal partner in addressing global challenges. The new Russian leadership emphasized the need for the world to view Russia as America's equal, implying that significant global issues can only be resolved with Russian involvement and approval. Additionally, There was an expectation that Central Europe would remain politically close to Russia, with former Warsaw Pact nations not necessarily gravitating towards NATO or the EU after the dissolution. The vision also relied on Western aid to support Russia's domestic reforms, which would ideally promote economic liberalization and the development of democratic institutions. The anticipated economic recovery and the appeal of a cooperative relationship with the U.S. encouraged newly independent states within the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS, to seek closer economic and political ties with Russia, enhancing its influence and power. However, this approach needed more realism, both internationally and domestically, as the U.S. was neither willing nor able to share global power with Russia. The new Russia was too weakened by decades of communist rule and social challenges to be considered a genuine global partner. From Washington's perspective, countries like Germany, Japan, and China were considered equally and more important than Russia in terms of influence and significance. Wow. Listen. On key geostrategic issues relevant to the U.S. national interest, particularly in Europe and the Middle East and the Far East, American and Russian aspirations often diverged. The supposed mature strategic partnership appeared increasingly superficial as these differences became apparent. Many Russians perceived it as a deliberate attempt to mislead their nation. The sense of disappointment might have been avoided had the U.S. embraced NATO expansion earlier and proposed a compelling partnership with Russia. A more decisive approach during the American-Russian honeymoon period, mainly after Boris Yeltsin supported Poland's interests in NATO membership in August of 1993, could have helped integrate Russia into the alliance process. However, the Clinton administration hesitated, continuing to prioritize a Russia-first policy for 2 additional years. By the time the U.S. formally advocated for NATO enlargement in 1996, Russia had become firmly opposed, resulting in a lost opportunity for cooperation. While some Russian concerns about NATO expansion were rooted in legitimate security fears, others were influenced by a Cold War mindset. They interpreted NATO's growth as a hostile advance of an American-led alliance rather than a natural evolution of European security. Within the Russian foreign policy elite, particularly among former Soviet officials, there remained a strong belief that America had no legitimate role in Eurasia, and that NATO's expansion was primarily an attempt by the U.S. to extend its sphere and influence. Some officials hoped that if it left unattached, Central Europe might eventually return to Moscow's geopolitical orbit once Russia regained its strength. However, many Russian Democrats were concerned that NATO's expansion would result in Russia being excluded from Europe, politically cut off, and deemed unworthy of participating in the European institutional framework. This cultural insecurity compounded their political fears, leading to the perception that NATO's growth was part of a long-standing Western strategy to isolate Russia, leaving it vulnerable to its adversaries. Furthermore, Russian Democrats struggled to comprehend the extent of resentment among Central Europeans regarding decades of Soviet dominance and their strong desire to be part of a broader Euro-Atlantic community. Ultimately, it is likely that the disappointment felt by the Russian elite and the decline of pro-Western voices could not have been avoided. The new Russian elite was internally divided and needed more consistent leadership, which hindered their ability to articulate a clear vision of Russia's role in Europe or to assess the limitations imposed by their weakened state realistically. Moscow's democratic factions hesitated to assert that the democratic Russia would not oppose NATO enlargement or seek closer ties with the transatlantic democratic community. The delusion of shared global status with the U.S. made it difficult to relinquish the notion of a privileged geopolitical position for Russia, not only in the former Soviet Union, but also concerning the former Central European satellite states. These dynamics benefited nationalist sentiments, which began to resurface by 1994, along with military factions that became key supporters of President Yeltsin. Their increasingly aggressive responses to Central European aspirations only strengthening the determination of these states to seek NATO's membership as a safeguard against potential Russian aggression. Interesting. So application of Matt Kinder's Heartland theory to past and present geopolitical significance in Central Asia. This was back in 1910. So today, the political discourse is heavily centered around geopolitics. First introduced by Sir Halford J. Mackinder, the founding father of modern geopolitics. In the early 20th century, his contributions to the international relations have been a resurgence in recent years, particularly his Heartland theory, which continues to provide a valuable insights into the geopolitics of the Eurasian continent. Mackinder's theory possesses that Heartland's central geographical location within Eurasia offers significant geographic, strategic, and geoeconomic advantages to any state that controls the region. That's important, allowing it to influence its adversaries effectively. Historical evidence of Russia's dominance in the Heartland, coupled with its status as superpower, supports and illustrates the relevance of Matt Kinder's theory and understanding current geopolitical dynamics. That's huge, right? That's huge. Everything is planned. Everything is tied together. Here's, you guys want to cover some of this. Here's some of his board. So this is Mr. Wilson's board memberships and affiliations. So the Truman Center for National Policy. The Truman defines national security broadly and believes that issues ranging from climate change to immigration to democratic resilience all impact America's national security, because broader inputs into policymaking lead to better policy outcomes. The Truman leverages national network, unwavering commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging, and growing a body of work that extends throughout America to reshape the national security discourse. Also, he has an affiliation with the Belarus Free Theater. See, the Belarus Free Theater, right, is an underground theater group in Belarus. As of 2023, it operates without official registration, premises, or facilities due to current political system. They're afraid of persecution. Rehearsals and performances, free for the public, are held secretly in private apartments that must be changed frequently for security reasons. The group has also staged performances in street cafes in rural areas. Theater members have faced harassment from authorities. The stage director and other staff have been dismissed from state-run theaters. Sounds like what, political groups, right? Interesting. He's also the ORID group. The Atlantic Council is dedicated to fostering the dynamic environment where diversity, equity, and exclusion thrive. We bring together individuals from various backgrounds, identities, genders, political affiliations, nationalities, and races to collaborate as global change agents. Our focus is recruiting capable, results-oriented colleagues committed to shaping the global future alongside our partners and allies. We strive to ensure inequity in compensation and promotions to create opportunities to advance and celebrate the Council's vibrant, diverse, and moral culture. Interesting. Lastly, he is also part of GLOBESEC, right? So it's based in Slovakia, established in 2005. It hosts an annual GLOBESEC Global Security Forum, one of the world's top 5 security conferences. The forum focuses on global security, transatlantic cooperation, and international relations. The 2016 forum featured over 1,000 participants from 70 countries and hosted notable speakers like Pope Francis, David Cameron, and Madeleine Albright. Also has ties to George Soros. GLOBESEC builds on the Slavic Atlantic Commission, SAC tradition, founded in 1993 to facilitate Slovakia's integration into NATO and the EU, which was achieved in 2004. In 2005, students from, let me take a stab at that, Mathey Bell University joined SAC, leading to the establishment of GLOBESEC Forum. The SAC expanded to include the Central European Policy Institute, CEPI, and the Central for European Affairs, CEA, creating the Central European Strategy Council. In 2016, GLOBESEC rebranded the Central European Strategy Council and its associated organizations, including CEPI, into the GLOBESEC Policy Institute. The Institute focused on four main research areas: security, defense, energy, and the future of Europe and the European neighborhood. Let's talk about the EU. So that's my report. So my report into Mr. Wilson brought us into a lot of things, didn't it? I hope you have a better understanding, right, of what's going on. The more that I do this, the more that we'll all understand what's happening in Ukraine and why it's happening. So thank you all again for following this report. Hope you enjoyed it, right? I probably skipped some things in here, but it's okay. We have an understanding of the report. I wanted to make some connections this evening because tomorrow we're going to start in on the board members. I'm going to try and cover 3 board members. I'll try, right? Because we have 30 to cover. We'll see. I don't want to make these videos too long, but I want to hit some key points. So thank you all again. So let's close out with our prayer. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get out of here this evening. Let me know if y'all enjoy seeing the report better or not. Okay. Close out in prayer. All right. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you, be merciful to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, now and forever. Sages. And may the Lord is our shepherd. We depart in peace in the name of the Lord, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Peace be with you all. Go in peace. Shalom, shalom. May the Lord forgive those who love us and those who hate us. Hope you enjoyed the report. Love you all so much. I'm out.